What's going on, guys? It's IllumiGnostic, and I want to thank everyone for 7,000 subs. It's always cool to hit another sort of milestone. Hopefully, 10,000 isn't too far away. I feel like that's when the channel really gets some traction, when we get to 10,000, because I know that I personally usually won't watch people's channels if they have less than 10,000 subs. So there's probably a lot of other people like that out there. It'll be great to have those walls come tumbling down. So if there's anything that you have been dying to ask me, this is a good time. Otherwise, I'm going to address some things I've seen in the comments, some criticism, and some sort of just pointed questions, I guess. I don't know. I noticed somebody in one of my Yopo videos, which was about this Yopo experience that I had. Well, it was actually Wilka. I tend to refer to it as Yopo just because it's something that people know a little better. But Yopo, Wilka, whatever, it's a seed from Peregrina adenanthera or Calabrina, which contains 3 forms of DMT. What's up, Flezic? Oh, yikes, jungle bug. Oh no, it's a botfly. God, that's great. That's exactly what you want landing on you in the... Jesus, man. Anyways, bot flies aside. What was I talking about? Oh, the Yopo Wilka video. And in the comments, this guy said, studies, sources, something to validate your pseudo-scientific bullshit. And I was thinking, like, this is literally a story. Like, this video is a story of my experience. It's how am I gonna? But you know, all trolling aside, I think that his challenge for me to cite my sources, I feel like I do a pretty good job of that. And you know, I think the reason that we have made it to 7,000 subs and that this channel has value for people is that, you know, I really do try to scrutinize, you know, spiritual ideas and metaphysical propositions and, you know, all this kind of stuff to the extent that I think it actually disappoints people sometimes when they meet me and they realize that this whole scientific illuminism thing of like really applying critical thinking, you know, as objectively as possible and mercilessly, then I'm actually going to do that. And you know, it can be depressing, I guess, in a way. It sort of can lead to like an existential crisis. But just to sort of directly answer that guy, you know, I guess my tendency is to devolve into sort of defending myself. But Masters in Houston wrote a great book called The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, which was sort of, I guess, derived from William James' book, The Variety of Religious Experience. And in it, they documented all sorts of experiments that were done with people with psychedelics way back in the early 60s, before any of these things were illegal. And it's remarkable in a lot of ways, but probably the most interesting study that they did, or experiments, I guess would be a better way of describing it. The ayahuasca alkaloids were originally termed telepamine and telepathine, which now we refer to as tetrahydroharmaline and harmala and harmaline, I think. There's other like lesser harmalas, like the ones in Bobinsana, and even Mapacho tobacco contains some harmalas. But anyways, the ones in ayahuasca were actually referred to as telepamine and telepathine back in the day, because all the way back to like Sir Walter Raleigh's diary, for those of you that don't know who that was, he was a explorer, sort of like a conquistador type character, and he was in the Amazon for whatever reason, and some shaman was drinking ayahuasca, and he said, well, I can know anything I want when I drink the vine. And Sir Walter Raleigh said, then tell me something you can't possibly know. And the shaman looked at him and said, your sister's dead. And 2 days later, or a week later, I guess, when he got the letter, it informed him that his sister had indeed died. And so anthropologists, this is all littered throughout the anthropological record as well, that there are shamans this was before television, like in the 1950s, 1960s. I mean, before there was television in the jungle. You know what I mean? Not before television existed, but before there was television in the jungle. I've been out to Warani villages where they're like semi-traditional houses, have a flat screen nailed to the wall. You know what I mean? So people have a window out of the jungle, but back then this wasn't the case, and so anthropologists, different anthropologists, totally unconnected people around the same time, so probably hadn't read each other's work, published after the fact when they left the jungle many years later. And they reported that there were shaman in the jungle that could describe the Eiffel Tower, street corners in China. So it's difficult for me to actually give like a concrete source in terms of studies for these kind of phenomena that people experience with plant medicine. But they're tremendously common, and there is a wealth of at least anecdotal reports throughout the anthropological record going back hundreds of years. So, it's not really something that I'm asserting out of nowhere. In fact, one of the things that has baffled me about the modern plant medicine scene is that so few people talk about the experiences of telepathy that not only occur during these experiences, but you tend to have those filters down and be receptive to the sort of, trickles, I guess, from the universal mind for weeks and weeks after. The author Daniel Pinchbeck, who I know has been canceled for being kind of a pervert or something, he called it a cult hangover after smoking DPT or DMT, and I thought that was a really great way to explain what happens after contact with some of these super psychedelics. So I haven't seen any questions yet. I'd like to talk about a couple of things that happened recently. I don't know if you guys saw the Brazilian wandering spider in my shower the other day, video I posted. They actually get much larger than that one. And in the video I said it is one of the most poisonous spiders on Earth, but it turns out it's actually the most poisonous spider on Earth. And a couple of you guys commented, things to the effect like, oh, well, they're not very aggressive, spiders won't, and no, it's not actually true. One single Brazilian wandering spider killed 2 toddlers a few years ago in Brazil. I guess it bit one of them, and it threw it, and it ran over and bit the other kid, and both kids died. So they're actually legitimately scary, and they're pretty aggressive. And one of the most interesting things about them, I think, and this is important even from a shamanic perspective. He did write Breaking Open the Head. And that's the book that I got that line from. I read just the first 10, 30 pages, something like that, like 20 years ago or something. But anyways, the Brazilian wandering spider will give you an erection that can last for like 24 hours, and it's an extremely painful erection, right? Like when they tell you if you take Viagra, if you have an erection lasting more than however many hours to call the hospital. The Brazilian wandering spider will also give you a painful erection that lasts for a really long time, and it can kill you. But when it is startled, it puts both of its front legs up, like straight up, like an erection, like doink, and it has this sort of faded orange underside to the arms, and that orange continues down into its mouth on both sides, so it really looks like a vagina. So it strikes me as a bit odd that this spider's defensive mechanism, that it actually causes erections, and its whole front of it, when it goes into this position, is both phallic and suggestive of a vagina. It's a pretty weird spider. And it's one of the people ask me all the time things like, you live in the Amazon rainforest with a toddler, like, aren't you scared of malaria? Or, Warani still spear each other sometimes, and not like we live that deep in the jungle or anything, but just that kind of stuff, like, aren't you worried that these things might eat you? Yeah, a little bit, but the only thing that really scares me here, there's 2 things, but the one that scares me the most is a Brazilian wandering spider, because they're extremely common. We find them in the house all the time, especially in Gualaquiza, which is like Shuar territory, about 9 hours south of here. They were very common down there. You see them. They seemed like it was the most common type of spider. Pretty scary. And yeah, so that's like the main thing that bothers. I check my clothes every time I put them on for sure because yeah, and I do have a toddler, you know. And the other thing that kind of scares me a little bit is the Dos Equis, more commonly known as the fer-de-lance. I'm not sure if the Bushmaster is the same snake or not, but it is extremely poisonous, and it's one of the few snakes that will not run away. It will stand its ground and fight. And it's a, you know, it's a top 10 venomous, what do you call them? Viper. So there's that. So this is supposed to be an AMA, you guys. Come on, I know you guys are always asking me stuff when I'm talking about other things, and I want to maintain my train of thought, so I'll ignore the chat sometimes. And so now that I'm like trying to do nothing but questions, nobody has any questions. And I'm trying to think, like, there was some other stuff that I wanted to kind of mention in case this happened. What about the parasite thing in the river that swims up your pee-pee? Yeah, man, that sucks, but that doesn't live here. Nagual does know the creatures here pretty well. He will pick up a tarantula. But he knows, you know, it's an interesting thing about children. By the time he was 18 months old, Nagual could correctly identify ayahuasca vines, bobinsana plants. In fact, his second word was bobinsana. The first word was it broke, or freeze, I guess. But his second word was bobinsana. He was bringing edible plants out of the jungle on his own, just from watching us. And the only time that he ate a mushroom without asking, he knew that it was correct. He knew that because he had seen us eating them as well. So, yeah, I mean, he's pretty good about that. I do worry about him approaching maybe a coral snake. In fact, we had a coral snake in the kitchen a little while back, and he's the one that found it, but he didn't go in and try to grab it. He did come and get us and say, by the way, guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. We're demonetized, which is one of the things I wanted to mention on this live stream, is that one of the big struggles with you know, getting this channel going, honestly, like I really thought we would have come a lot further by now, partly based on how quickly the channel took off in the first place, but the whole shadow banning thing is definitely real, and the censorship is definitely real. And it's something that I feel like, you know, even if you're not a YouTuber or someone who really has any kind of stake in social media, it's really important to help us fight back, because they are suppressing information. Yeah, Cynthia, he is really lucky to have his formative years in the Amazon rainforest. I'll try to make a bookmark that I want to get back to something about biophotons and toddlers. Yeah, Flezik, it is much cooler in the Amazon too. It's unfortunate we didn't make it out here when you were here before. But what was that? Okay, so the shadow banning thing, and the way that you can see this for yourself is that the algorithm is supposed to look at views to like ratios, and if they are higher than 10%, they will continue to push that video. But if you have been shadow banned or deprioritized, is how they put it, you'll notice that some of my videos, especially lately, I've been getting really good, like, you know, 30% of the people that view hit the like button. That should push the video, and you'll see them stop and just die. So, you know, I'm partly mentioning that to ask you guys, you know, I appreciate that you've already subbed, but sharing my videos is really helpful, because what they've done is they have gone across platforms. So multi-platform ban, they actually sent me a notice about this. YouTube did. So this is not like conspiracy theory crap. They actually notified us that they are working together across platforms to fight disinformation. So they have shadow banned me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, probably not TikTok, but recently something happened, and we did find out that TikTok was participating in some of this multi-platform stuff, which is weird, because that's not even a US corporation. That's supposed to be China. So the fact that we have censorship cooperation amongst, you know, social media giants that are not even allied, the nations that they belong to, That's pretty crazy. You know, that is really, you know, really New World Ordery, um, for lack of a better word. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, my content should be better than it does. It's really frustrating because, um, you know, I will see my stats and then the algorithm ignore it anyways. I'm like, oh, that's great. But you guys can help me out by sharing it because what I was saying is that if I go on Facebook and I share my stuff, Facebook literally has a little thing where I can click on it and it says, you know, your post will be moved lower in people's feeds indefinitely. It said for 90 days, but it said 90 days or longer, at least 90 days, is how they phrased it. So, you know, I can't really promote myself even. And here's the thing, this is where it gets really insane. You might think, okay, IllumiGnostic, well, why don't you just make a new account and, you know, promote yourself on a new channel? They have started using, they analyze your keystrokes, they detect what devices are near your other devices, right? So they can figure out if you're doing that. So even if I create a new channel and I make all this amazing content, and if they can figure out that my keystrokes match me and some of those keystroke matching components are near these other devices, they're going to shadow ban anything coming from any of those devices. So it's, you know, once they have got you on their list, you really can't get away. There's no running, there's no hiding, there's no masking, there's nothing you can do. Um, Yeah, it's weird. You know, I'm not really even sure what I did exactly, except that when I originally got demonetized, it was right after I talked about Kamala Harris's record. Maybe that they didn't like that. I guess I'm not really not sure. Um, so any questions, you guys? We're still doing this AMA thing. Okay, so there actually was something back here. Let me see. Oh yeah, the botfly. Let me mention that. You guys might have seen the botfly larva extraction that we did on this random like street dog. Dogs are not treated super well in Ecuador in general, and way out in the jungle even worse. I mean, I don't think most of them get petted even. They're just kind of there, like chicken or something. They're all tiny because they don't get a lot of food. It's not great. And so one day this like skeletal dog with its tail tucked between its legs and botfly, you know, they're like these lumps that move when you touch them because they're these giant larvae eating the dog under the skin. And namaste. And so we pulled, what you do is you put Vaseline on them so they can't breathe, and then they stick their head up to get a gasp of breath and grab them by the head with tweezers and pull them out. And so I posted a video of that. That dog, we actually went and bought her from the owner the other day. And so she's here now downstairs, and I'm gonna make a video of then and now so you can see the difference, but it is crazy. She's like running around playing. She didn't know what playing was when we first found her. You know, she was like skeletal on the edge of death. She has more bot flies. We're gonna have to get around to extracting them. But she doesn't keep her tail tucked between her leg anymore. She you know, is like normal dog wagging her tail around. It's crazy. Thank you, Andrea. It really is remarkable how quickly the animal sort of recovered from all that trauma, and yeah, it's doing great now. And we found it a home. We found it an adoptive home because we're leaving Miss Hawaii soon. By the way, the retreats at Ngaru are filling up, it looks like, for April and March 1st, which doesn't surprise me, but we do have only, I think, 12 rooms, and 6 of them only hold 1 person. So if you're planning to come during those months, you had better make a deposit because it's going to fill up, and we may not do it again. And certainly not at Ngaru, not because we don't like it, we love it, but just because we're going to move on and go either back to California or to Peru. We really want to travel, so if you saw the Ngaru video and it looks interesting to you, that those retreats at that location are only going to happen for January, February, March, April, 4 months, and then we're going to be done with that. So, okay, so yeah, they do infect horses a lot. So somebody had mentioned something about my son being lucky to be in the Amazon, and I really feel like the just the exposure to all the biodiversity alone on an energetic basis has got to have some kind of effect. There's an interesting theory about how ayahuasca was discovered that involves biophotons, which have been researched, and they are basically little photons, packets of light that carry information somehow, right? And by the way, I think this is one of our scientific bits of evidence that the whole like hermetic mystery school, I mean, it's not really just that tradition, but you know, this idea that light carries consciousness, or that light is the originator of consciousness. I think the fact that it is definitely proven that it can carry information is a good indication. Speaking of sourcing my pseudoscience, right, that's a plausible thing, right? So anyways, there are these biophotons that are emitted by DNA at the rate of 100 per second per square centimeter, or 1 to 300 per second per square centimeter of any living tissue. So plants and animals both do this. And, you know, I keep looking at this light as if it's where the camera is, because usually it used to be, and now it's over here, because our camera is finally getting fixed. It's in the shop, and by the way, it'll be back to 4K. And it lights internally, so it won't look so shitty anymore. What was I saying though? Okay, the biophotons. So any living tissue, plant or animal, that contains DNA is showering everything with biophotons, which are little packets of light that contain information. And so the theory was basically that when an indigenous person says, like, you know, we talked to the jungle told us, what they're actually saying is that they're still receptive to the information coming from these biophotons. They don't have those words for it, but that is the physical mechanistic thing that facilitates, you know, that level of communication. And so the DNA is communicating directly with the DNA. And I think that having a small child in that environment has got to be like the best possible recipe for you know, holistic upbringing and development. And of course, you know, he's able to consume a lot of medicinal plants that I think probably giving his immune system quite a boost. Also, you know, his protein comes from things like palm grubs, the chankuru. I just posted a video of him eating those because someone commented, you know, you should post another video of what he eats in a year or whatever. And so it's about a year later, and he's still eating the chankurus. He ate 6 of them today. They're huge. I couldn't believe it. He was just shoveling them down the way a North American kid would eat French fries or something. So yeah, guys, still looking for questions or just topics in general. I don't have a ton of time tonight, and you know, once again, I want to thank you guys for all the support. This channel has definitely been like a lifeline. When I was having health problems that were crippling, people from this community basically kept us going, which is amazing. And so I definitely feel indebted. It's also really rewarding. You know, quite a number of people have sent me messages saying that something from this channel, you know, kept them going, or you know, I had a person that's become a friend and client, you know, because I do consulting, like a half-hour blocks of FaceTime, and you know, she was telling me that she didn't even think she'd be here if it wasn't for me. And hearing that kind of stuff from people is really great. And you know, going forward, I'm really going to try to refocus on my original intention for this channel, which was to really try to assist people in like breaking free from the matrix and at least realizing their capacity, their highest capacity, you know, their real true purpose, and not being afraid to pursue that without reservation, without fear, and with total conviction. Because if you're not doing that, you are wasting your life. Period. End of story. There's no middle ground for that. You know, there's no middle ground. And so what you have to do is optimize. You have to balance the pentagram. You know, each one of the points of the pentagram represents a different aspect of our being, along with all the other stuff that it represents. And so, you know, that balancing is the fundamental, foundational work, and then, you know, all the growth can happen from there. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm really trying to get refocused on. And I think I felt a little bit discouraged with World War III sort of looming, and you know, the cryptocurrency thing has turned out. It's turned out that the naysayers probably were right. That it seems that the major cryptocurrencies were all sort of entangled and scamming, and now they are, you know, Solana has turned out to be owned like almost 20% by the FTX guys. So, you know, it's one gigantic fucking rug pull, and it's really unfortunate because it is what we need to do. We have to free ourselves from the banks and the, you know, Federal Reserve and all of this kind of shit. But it's kind of looking like crypto, at least with the current, you know, landscape and the current players, it's not going to do anything for us. The other thing is that people don't have the balls. People just don't have the balls. They're too scared. Every time, you know, there's a little bit of FUD, the market comes crashing down. And so the thing is, you know, and also regulators, right? Like every time the U.S. or China or India or somebody is like, oh, we're going to regulate shit out of this, tax everyone, everybody sells off all their crypto. Well, if you're going to let the fiat currencies determine whether or not you hold your crypto is not going to do what crypto was supposed to do. It's fucking dumb monkeys, man. It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening. Because the thing is, if everyone just held, then it would have worked, you know, if it wasn't also for all the scams and whatnot. So let's see, I think I saw a question. Plotinus Neoplatism. Yeah, you can contact me. There's an email in the description for contacting me. That's the best thing to do. illuminosis111@gmail.com. But yeah, just look in the description. Also, you know, feel free to support us. We're demonetized. So if you like the music or the message, you can Zelle or PayPal to bloopers@gmail.com and or send crypto to long ass string of numbers and letters, or Cash App IllumiGnostic. So somebody was asking about favorite authors and books, and that's a tricky one. But I would have to say that, you know, Timothy Leary was pretty hit or miss, but definitely in my formative years, Tim Leary was, and still like totally undervalued. Tim Leary was, you know, a lot of it is that the conspiracy theorists have labeled him a snitch and a CIA agent and all this stuff, and you guys have to remember to be really, really skeptical of conspiracy theory stuff, because most of it comes from the Christian right wing, and so they're, you know, completely insane morons, and you should not allow their thinking or beliefs to influence you in any way, shape, or form. And so, you know, this whole thing about Terrence and Timothy and all, you know, all these other people being CIA agents is completely stupid. And I could, you know, well, maybe I should do a video where I actually show you where all those are rumors. Like, you can trace them back to the source, and it's really easy to see how it happened. And, you know, another one is the adrenochrome thing. It's very similar. It's not real. It's definitely not real. And there's 100 ways, probably more than any other conspiracy theory ever, that I can just tear it to the ground to pulp, and, you know, tear it to pulp, make paper out of it, and print the news on it. I mean, it's just, you know. So anyways, Robert Anton Wilson, I think is probably the most underrated intellectual of the last 200 years or so. At least definitely in the psychedelic scene. He was an occultist. He studied a lot of Aleister Crowley and all of that. He did it with a very skeptical mind, and he did it with, I think, 2 or 3 PhDs, and he had a very like an Ivy League level education. Whether he did it himself or not, I'm not sure. But in physics, psychology, just as much knowledge of the occult and philosophy, and so just absolutely brilliant polymath. And he actually, once you see the level of reverence, someone like, if you recognize Robert Anton Wilson's genius, and then look at the reverence he had for Timothy Leary, it really says a lot about who Timothy Leary really was. But anyways, yeah, Robert Anton Wilson, Prometheus Rising, the IllumiGnostic trilogy. You may have a hard time getting through the first 150 pages, but by the time you're done, every single person I've ever recommended that book to has read it 3 times, and it's like 1,100 pages long. So, yeah, Prometheus Rising is pretty amazing. And there's a few others: Schrodinger's Cat, Masks of the Illuminati, Cosmic Trigger 1 and 2, Final Secret of the Illuminati. It was really, really great stuff, Robert Anton Wilson, and hilarious, which helps because a lot of it's kind of dense and tedious, but it's so funny that it sort of compensates. And also, one of the great accomplishments of Robert Anton Wilson is that he actually printed the most solid evidence for it's not metacognition that has ever been recorded. Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law comes close, but nowhere near the specific. In IllumiGnostic trilogy, in the last book, he's describing a Illuminati pyramid that's actually a single-celled organism that is the oldest organism, the source of all the other life on Earth, at the bottom of this, I think the Mariana Trench or something. But whatever it is, he gave coordinates. And in 2003, about 10 years before he died, they found a pyramid right there, where he described it in this book in 1974. And also, he talks about 9/11 in that book, Black Flag operations that the U.S. government does in order to strip the rights away from the populace. Like, it's insane to read that book. It's one of those things where you're like flipping back to the copyright to check the year over and over again as you're reading it, because you're like, no, this can't be right. But it is, and there's actually, it used to be on YouTube. I haven't looked for it in years, but there used to be an interview with him where they actually asked him, Philip K. Dick, I've never read, where they actually asked Robert Anton Wilson if, what was up with that whole pyramid thing. And I don't think he gave much of an answer. What are you going to say? So, what else? Oh, and if you're really ambitious, I think Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce is probably one of a contender for the 3, one of the 3 most extraordinary things that mankind has developed, at least, top 10. The pyramids, the Grateful Dead, LSD, technology in general, I guess, flight, and Finnegan's Wake. Although Timothy Leary, speaking of Leary, said that the IllumiGnostic trilogy was more important than Finnegan's Wake, which, so we're getting into some deep territory here. But Finnegan's Wake is an extraordinary piece of work, but it's not like a book that you read. It is like a lifelong commitment, basically. There was a brilliant man named Joseph Campbell, who was a Harvard historian, mythologist, I think, probably was his technical title more specifically. And he actually once said that he saw natural magic with his own eyes twice in his life, once in the jungles of Borneo and once at a Grateful Dead concert. Once in the jungles of Borneo and at Grateful Dead concerts. And he also said that the Grateful Dead were the antidote to the atom bomb. And it was a very strange thing to see back then, because he was like this 70-year-old Harvard mythologist, and he's like this big deadhead, and it was just a strange thing. There's actually a really great interview with Garcia and Campbell together, and so anyways, why the hell was I talking about Joseph Campbell? Other than the fact that everyone should know about Joseph Campbell and read Joseph Campbell. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The Finnegan's Wake. Joseph Campbell wrote A Skeleton's Key for Finnegan's Wake, so that's really helpful. You can't just get Finnegan's Wake and read it. You're going to need help. And so the way that the book is constructed is that the first line of the book starts in the middle of a sentence, but it ends in the middle of the same sentence. So the book makes a complete circle. And it's not exactly written in English. It's written in words that phonetically sound like English, but they are syllables that can be interpreted in several different languages. So the first syllable might be, it means one thing in Latin and something else in German and something in, because James Joyce spoke 72 languages. So if you consider all that and then you put a word together and you realize, okay, well, we have 4 syllables here, and then you draw a line through these different syllables, you can make sentences, so each word can expand into, a few sentences or a sentence, and then a paragraph becomes an entire chapter. And there were all these references throughout the whole thing to all sorts of historical stuff and, esoteric Kabbalah. And, even the title of the book, Finn Again, is a reference to the fact that you're never sure whether Finnegan is dead and being reincarnated, or if he's waking up from being drunk, and the whole, the origin of the Finnegan is an Irish drinking tale where Finnegan is dead and he's in a casket, someone pours whiskey on him and he jumps out of the casket and comes back to life. So Finnegan's Wake, if you have a decade to devote to trying to understand how a human being could possibly have created something like this, that's a great book. Let's get woogie. Moontang Bukowski. That's great. I would find it quite tiring to live in Western society after being free in the jungle. The reality is, if you don't know me and you don't follow this channel, I have not been matrix bound for, I was 31, I'm 43 now, 12 years, and that was only for a few years. Before that, I think I had a job 5 or 6 years before. So I've always at least had like my own company or something. Like I had a little landscaping business for a while when I lived in Colorado, and so yeah, I couldn't possibly like punch a clock and sit in an office, or I would literally rather die. And a lot of people might think that's crazy, but I feel like once you have escaped that, I don't see how you could possibly, particularly the longer you're outside of it, I think the harder and harder it is to even consider going back to it. And it's a blessing and a curse for me, in the sense that I was raised by an outlaw, basically, but in the wrong way. I did this Toxic Moms live stream the other day, but I'm gonna throw Toxic Dads under the bus too. It wouldn't be fair if I didn't. In fact, the night after I did the Toxic Moms live stream, I got a message from my dad saying that he had just told his 300-pound, 65-year-old wife that she had better sleep with a gun tonight. And so really, it was actually in that moment that I thought, yeah, I better address this also. So you know what I mean? Like it's a double-edged sword, because it sort of prepared me to not be a normal person ever, and sort of made it impossible. But nowadays I have to do a sort of balancing act because I'm a dad now. I can't take the kind of risks that I used to. So I have to be able to interface with normal society a little bit more, at least, in the sense of social media. And the reality is that I can barely use technology. Like, I mean, I've gotten better, but I should say I can barely use it. That's not really true. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not as natural for me. And it's not just the using of the technology, but navigating, just social stuff and so it's a weird thing. I'm really thankful for the freedom that I've had, but it's coming at a high price as well, and I just want to acknowledge that it's not all freedom and glory. There's been a lot of struggles, especially with my health problems in the last few years, but also because of COVID, because a lot of our and also the censorship, shadow banning and stuff. So, but no, I could not possibly do that. I could live in a town. I could live in a city, probably even like San Francisco or somewhere on the outskirts. But I couldn't. I could never assimilate back into like normal society and work a 9 to 5 and try to be a normal person. I can't make small talk. You know what I mean? Like I can't do it. Like I've never been able to do it. It's all just, I'm going to the deepest possible core of whatever's there, or I'm just not doing anything. I'm not saying anything, That's just kind of how it is. Yeah, you missed the Toxic Mom stream, but you can still click on lives and it's all there. But anyways, I was saying I'm going to do the Toxic Dads too. Because, man, that really got me. Yeah, Northern Light. I mean, I don't just be jealous. Do something. I mean, it's you just have to acquire new skill sets, which is not that difficult. And I mean, really, in this modern era, there are no excuses that you can make that are legitimate. Because if you're too dumb, take psilocybin, and it will help you to grow a better brain. Like, this is literally true. Take psilocybin with zinc and lion's mane, and you'll improve your memory, and you will create new neural pathways, and you'll be smarter. So you can't make that excuse. You just have to create multiple streams of income, and you have to just expand your skill set, and you have to do it with tact and grace, and know what you want, and go after it and get it. And I'm certainly not rich. In fact, things are still a struggle, by and large, I guess. But I'm certainly not trapped anywhere, and I more or less do what I want. And so, I would just encourage you to figure out what it is that you need to do in order to facilitate whatever you need to escape, actually escaping it, and just do it. Oh, I appreciate that, Moontang. Um, I felt like I saw another question or something here a while ago. But yeah, apathy rages out of control. That there's nothing truer that you could say, man. And it's not just it's hard, man. It's really hard. It's hard to reach people these days. I can remember back in the 2000s, the aughts or whatever, when people could still think. Not just like myself and 7 other people, but like a lot of people could still think. And it's really difficult to permeate people's walls, I guess, anymore. Um, yeah, so apathy, and also sort of things like anchoring bias, where people, whatever information they get in the first place, they're just going to stick with that. And so when we have um, traps that are laid, once people are stuck in them, the whole tar pit baity thing, I think that story was actually racist, and that's not what I mean. I'm just saying you get stuck in the tar until it's all over you, and you become the tar, basically. The backstory of how I got into the jungle, it started when I was a child, actually. I just, first I was in the school library and I found this little book called Flowering Plants that I think slipped into the elementary school library because it looked like just a book about flowers. It just had like a heavenly blue morning glory on the front, and it was just called Flowering Plants. And heavenly blue morning glories contain LSA, which is like LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide versus lysergic acid amide. So it's like almost the same thing. And in fact, it's the first time that, because LSD was discovered before LSA, it's the first time that a chemical was synthesized before it was discovered in nature, or at least, something so close of an analog, it may as well almost be the same thing. Although, by the way, LSA trips are not really, they're a lot like LSD, except the physical stuff is much more consistent with the plant medicine, which makes sense because it's coming from a plant, right? So anyways, that book slipped into the elementary school library, and that was the first thing. Like it was talking about ayahuasca and datura and henbane and mandrake and a lot of the poison path plants. But yeah, that really got my fascination. I think I sort of intuitively knew that this stuff was going to be important to me, integral even over time, and so it really lit a fire under my ass. I think I acquired a copy of the Psychedelics Encyclopedia by the next year, which would have been like 7th grade. And I had read it back to back so many times I'd pretty much memorized it by 8th grade. By the time I got into 9th grade, at least I had more or less memorized all 1,100 pages of the Psychedelics Encyclopedia. And so from there, and I always had a really deep appreciation of animals and nature. Like I had these safari cards when I was a kid, and I memorized like everything. My grandmother said I used to call her up and just read the backs of these cards. So now I was a very, very advanced kid, so I was doing that sort of thing by the time I was 5. Supposedly my mom said that I read the Bible when I was 5 years old, and it was the first time she heard me use profanity. I walked up to her and handed it to her and said, "This is bullshit, Mom." And so 5.5, 6 years old, something like that, really, really young. And also I remember when I was in 2nd grade, I was tested, and I was reading at an 11th grade level in 2nd grade, and like they took me out of the normal school and put me in like a gifted and talented program, and that was actually focused on animals as well. So I had just a lot of interest in the natural world, and also all this metaphysics and stuff. Like even then, it's like I was born this way. And so I read a book called One River by Wade Davis that was all about Richard Evans Schultes, who was sort of like a psychedelic Indiana Jones of the 1930s and 40s. He was a Harvard professor that kept a bucket of peyote buttons by his front door, and the kids could like eat them and go home and write a paper about what happened and get extra credit or whatever. And that was in like the late 30s, so like really crazy guy. He got lost in the jungle for like 12 years, and when he finally came out, he was like dragging like a thing full of trays of plants, like 12,000 new species or something. And he found a plateau in Peru where like 99% of the vegetation was psychoactive. The grass contained DMT, and so that book actually contained a story about a group of Warani that speared a group of missionaries when they landed their plane right over there. And that was a mind blower because I didn't do that on purpose. We didn't even come to Miss Wali on purpose. We had a meeting with a Shuar cat that I missed, and so we needed an alternative place to go, and we came here to Miss Wali, and someone had a house that was open that they just offered to let us house sit. Didn't really have any intention of staying here at the time. But I didn't know that the book that inspired me to come to the Amazon, that the Warani that speared those people, their grandkids were the Warani women that were walking around in town. So that was just nuts. So yeah, I mean that's basically, and then as far as like the events that actually ended me up here, way more complicated. I was a pot grower, outlaw style in Northern California, and that scene started to just fall apart when they started legalizing and the price was dropping super hard, super fast. And I also had a problem with a new strain of mites that the government sprayed from trucks, claiming that it was to try to combat invasive species of milk thistle. And these mites actually get inside of the plant and destroy it from the inside, and it presents like a nitrogen deficiency. So by the time I figured out that it was russet mites and not nitrogen deficiency, I'd lost a lot of my crop, and so there was just a series of unfortunate events that sort of culminated with a visit to my mother here in Ecuador that itself culminated in her suicide. And so my life in California, the industry that I was a part of, had become untenable, and I started a Shopify store that was in the top 25 for traffic, and so we thought we had income, and we came down here and they pulled our license because our IP address moved, which makes no sense because that's the whole point of Shopify. You can do it from anywhere in the world, and we were unable to. I should have sued them or something, I don't know. So my income got yanked as soon as we landed here, and then I started this YouTube channel and started to make money, and then I got demonetized. And then we started mailing rape and plant medicine stuff all over the planet. And then they shut down the post office in Ecuador. And so it's just, I've had to like reconfigure and redefine myself over and over and over again to try to stay alive. And then my partner got pregnant. We got pregnant, I guess. And at the same time, though, my health took a dive. So it's really just been an intense and wild ride. But, I basically got sucked into the Amazon because the Amazon wanted me here, is how I kind of feel about it. Ayahuasca once told me that she helps people that can help her, and that is why I have been sort of called to do this work. And I don't know if I really explained how I ended up with the Quichua shaman at Garu, how that all went down, but man, I would like to see someone calculate the probability that story would, it's just, serendipitous doesn't even do it. Yeah, that's probably because my computer, I wonder if that's been happening this entire time. My voice has been deep. My computer will just change settings internally somehow without being told to. So it was probably set for the 48 that it's supposed to be, and it just went back to 44 on its own. Absolutely maddening. So I apologize for that, but we actually got ripped off. I think we bought this computer for top dollar, and I think it was refurbished, and all the real components were taken out and replaced with garbage. So we got really screwed, which I guess is just the danger of buying something like a computer in South America. So once again, guys, thank you so much for your support and helping us get to 7,000 subs. Hopefully 10,000 will come faster than 7,000 did. And I hope to see you guys all at the retreats at Ngaru. It's probably going to be the last leg of retreats that I'm going to do. Finally, my inheritance is moving through the courts. It's not anything massive, but it will be enough for me to sort of give my social medias a makeover and get some professional help and get things maybe moving a little bit more in the direction of writing books and doing podcasts. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to listen to it when I'm done because, sometimes you guys tell me stuff and it is you. So, it's your stuff and not mine. So, never really sure what to think about that. But I am going to sign off now. Thank you guys so much for supporting us, for keeping us alive even over the years. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, where you can join our secret streams where we are divulging Masonic secrets directly from a book that was supposed to be kept secret, written by 33rd degree Mason Albert Pike. It has been extremely revelatory and badass. So join Patreon, fuck around and find out. All right, guys, we will see you again very soon.